The story of this novel takes place between Mexico and the US. The main characters are the Mexican Frida K, a literature student, and the American Baron Epstein, Macbeth, an economics student. The two meet at Harvard University. He is the son of a real estate magnate, Donna Epstein, who belongs to one of the most influential families and who fights for his son Baron to be the next mayor of New York. Frida begins to discover the secrets of this powerful family through dreams and surreal characters who send her messages to warn her. Her day-to-day life is written in a magical realism where activism is present through her poems, which also narrate her permanent state of survival. Fleeing from the clutches of the whole to enter the parallel world of surrealism. Poetic novel of suspense and magical realism. Is a novel that contains an activist force that challenges the most powerful. It is a work with erotic lines, a manifesto of comedic politics, of denunciation, of overflowing passion and love.
Thank you so much, La Ninfa Eco, for your warm invitation to disseminate my novel. And I will I will start with my reading. Several times I was about to lose my life and I was saved. Now I sing the names of those who weren't saved, and in each cry I die with them, and with each song I resuscitate with them. The soul of the innocent who were tortured and murmured will travel to reincarnate in the body of the chosen ones. If the dead of the past are present in the future, the unborn of the future are present in the past. What is it of the cursed fish, of the lion-headed fish? What is the necklace? The leaders of the group in Mexico kidnapped whole families of ecologists, feminist activists, and native leaders. In the United States, they ordered to kidnap women and Afro-descendant women and men. And they had in mind to kidnap the girl Isabel and the Zero Universe. The dismantled bodies of the victims would be given to others before they would rape mothers in front of their children, and they would tear their eyes and the faces of children while they were still alive. The gods would bleed tears in all spaces of prayer for all religions of the world. They would kneel faced with the hypnosis that gave signs of an apocalypse. If you remember me, you will breathe for me. If you remember me, you will resuscitate me. Thank you. Frida K, the poet, and Macbeth, the trafficker or the smuggler of dreams. This is what I wrote based on this book. Transgressive in words, daring, shameless in the effort to defend the weak of their gender. Although she herself, if she had ever been, in my opinion, is no longer weak, neither fragile nor weak, brave. Rosa Suñé begins her book trying to pull out with her teeth the feathers or scales of a hierophant, if it, under its long purple cape, had them, or if it were the ultimate bearer of the staff and the life organizer of the other half of humanity. Are the butterfly effect and the dragonfly those dreams that came out of their own well? Are they the cries that her mother conveyed to her from the womb, the sounds that impregnated in her heart to recognize from a very young age the victims of the obstinate Mexican machismo? What I wrote and what I'm going to read now is called The Death Rattle and Its Cadence. A witch's Sabbath, a Guernica, a constellation of blood and ordeals, an apocalypse. Nothing is enough to name and define the new universe in which Rosa Suñé introduces us. In this book, there is no calm. On the contrary, each scene exceeds the previous one, adding darker and more macabre overtones. The hyperbole is so extreme that precisely thanks to it, everything is plausible because deep down it is. The author takes a surrealistic approach and elaborates a fragmented story that alternates prose and verse, genre that intertwine and justify each other and one in the other. Deconstruction, honorism, naturalism, expressionism, and the esperpentos of Benito Pérez Galdós and Ramón del Valle Inclán.
I believe that the objective of this novel is to make any person who has the opportunity to be touched by it question all the prior knowledge he or she thought they had, misconceptions, and of course to ask themselves, what if everything I know was just a lie? What if I have always been mistaken? What if I don't know the answers, any of the answers? Am I living or just breathing? Rosa Suñé has gotten to the moment where she needs to leave because she has a son, but she also knows that what she wants to teach could or could not be heard, and her soul is crying to be heard by all of those who have the chance to read her. She has been enjoying these hallucinations where she can be guided by great women, those who came before us, such as Frida Kahlo, Remedios Varo, Leonora Carrington, Bridget Bate Titchener, Dorothea Tanning, Rachel Bate, and Jane Ramrow, while she decided to surround this mentoring diving into some Gregorian chants, having a misconception open some magical channels in 2009, where she had a miscarriage and prepared her to conceive The Dance of the Damned Fish, a magical realism story.
Thank you very much. Well, Rosie, well, you have said a lot about Rosie. I only would like to say something more. Rosie, I believe in gratitude, and I am very grateful that you are in the path of my life, because of that way we can join forces to raise our voice, to speak up for the injustice that are happening in the world against women and also against children. And I think that you created a safe environment where we all can come together and we can discuss and talk and to show what we actually think about all the situation, but above that, artistically, from an artistically point of view. Thank you very much for that. Thank you as well for this opportunity to share with you the presentation of your first book, your first novel written in Spanish, FRIDA, POETA, y MACBETH, El Fabricante de Sueños. I'm so pleased that you invite me today. And thank you to the Ninfa Eco as well for the work that you do supporting the young writers. And I will start with this section with a first question. Rosie, as you created and invented the verb almar in your novel, do you believe in the practice this action has occurred, although it has not been named yet?
Thank you for your words, Karina. I'm really grateful. The verb almar, for me, symbolizes in the novel a form of purification, of shamanic medicine, of hypnosis or energetic hypnosis from woman to woman, from women to women faced with a traumatic event. I believe that in real life, this type of hypnotic energies have been created in women's circles. In my novel, I place this action between special beings from other dimensions in parallel universes that interact with the character living on Earth, that is FRIDA. I hope I answered your question.
You did, thank you. Tell me something, in your novel, how did you prepare to describe the character's cruel and ruthless actions with such as accuracy?
Well, in my real life, throughout my life in Mexico and my existence, I met with the eyes of real ruthless people who have attacked me or tried to attack me. This is in Mexico. People, not only to myself, but also to people close to me, people I know, relatives, friends. At some point, I was able to look into their eyes and penetrate into the eyes of these people. And I imagined their stories as children. And those actions got stuck in my mind. Those stories that I imagined, and I compared those to the actions that they were conducting as adults. And I thought that all those memories and things that I went through during my childhood, adolescence, and part of my adulthood, I thought they could help me to express them in the novel. I had to document a lot of things. It was a painful process because I had to read,
Remember,
journalism based on this research. I watched videos on social media, the press denouncing femicide, murders of women, activism, the description of tortures that were suffered when autopsies have been performed on victims. It was very painful, but I had to go through all this in order to narrate it in the novel. Thank you.
oh, definitely. I kind of recognize that process. It's a painful process. Thank you. Thank you for being so open. Rosie, your novel features parallel stories set in different magical dimensions with scenes of magical realism and also surrealism. When writing a poetic novel in a context of war, how were you able to imagine and create so many characters?
Well, thanks to this, or due to this violent process that I suffered in Mexico, I've lived surreal situations and I have miraculously survived many events of violence. As a child, I had the need to invent myself a magical world faced with the tragic events I heard or saw. I think all that wandering helped me to create all these worlds in my novel. Plus, I've always liked fantastic stories or novels, or futuristic or magical realism novels, both literary and cinema. And the war context is because I think it is necessary to denounce everything that is going on with women around the world and children in criminal networks of human trafficking, as in the issue of institutional racism and the torture and disappearance of activists. Thank you.
Thank you to you for the answer. My last question. Are the dance of the cursed fish, the necklace of hunger, and the lion head fish society perhaps symbols of something more that isn't fully explored in this first novel?
Yes, this novel is the preamble of the dance of the cursed fish. That is to say, here is not the end of the development of the plot. There will be a second part, a second novel that will be the continuation. It is a saga where part of the keys that you mentioned will be revealed. So when that's ready, of course, you will see it posted in social media. Thank you.
Now you hang us with curiosity. Thank you.
I will switch the language now. So Rosie, when someone writes, there's part of the soul of the author that is left in each character. You leave your soul in each character. In the process of writing this book, what relation or how do you relate to FRIDA and how can you relate to Baron? It's a good question. Well, since I have reason, FRIDA has been internalized in myself as in all Mexican people. I think my deepest identification or sense of relatedness is when in 2009 I had my first miscarriage, and it happened to be a moment where I started reading or looking at Frida Kahlo's paintings with another perspective. And even when I already knew it, it's like all this information had been numb. The fact that Frida Kahlo had 3 miscarriages, and I also had 3 miscarriages before I could go for my son to Ethiopia. So this deepening and a process of awareness to look at Frida Kahlo from a different perspective started from a more mature perspective from these painful experiences. And I wanted to take it to this writing process because many of her paintings inspired me to reflect the woman's pain there. So this is the part with which I can relate. And the main character, Frida, which is another Frida, this means there are 2 Fridas. There is a lot of me in her, because there are many real experiences that are reflected there. Some others are fictionalized. Some were portrayed in a dramatic way. And then there's another part that is the real testimony of real women that I've developed to denounce everything that's going on. So I've lived or I've been through violence. I was about to be raped 5 times. I was about to be kidnapped, and of course all this is shown in my work. And more than my life is the denunciation of other women who unfortunately could not make it alive. I think it was my duty to write for all those people, those women who were there and that are still alive despite them not being among us. And writing is a way to carry out literary activism. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rosie.
Recently, I read an interview you did with Publisher Weekly magazine. I have to say that you have an impressive and shocking personal story, and thank you for sharing that. Upon reading, you quote Alexandra Pizarnik, the great Argentinian poet who is the star of the upcoming 4th edition of the International Women Poetry and Art Circle Violeta, My Surrealist World, announced by FRIDAs from Barcelona and the world, the poetry community that you have created. Among all the things that my colleagues here have mentioned, your novel is also interesting because you have cited a verse from some of the poets who attended to your cultural event, giving them an opportunity to showcase their poetry. Also, I find awesome the addition of full poems in your novel, many of them coming from the opening of your poet event. Thank you very much for that. Said that, I think that the combination of poetry and narrative in a novel of suspense and magical realism with surrealism and feminist overtones is a difficult challenge to write. And this, I guess, has been a challenge for you, so pet off, but also for your readers. Without a doubt, this novel will not leave anyone indifferent, especially those who want to read a real original.
And I would like to read a small poem that I've written that doesn't belong to this book, but will be included in my second book, the continuation of this novel. And I thought about it coming from the tragedy of the Medina massacre in the border between Spain and Morocco, where migrants were killed and they only wanted to survive. They were not criminals. Because migrating is not a criminal act. Migrating is not illegal. Black Lives Matter. Faced with the Ukraine war, Europe helped. Why won't they do the same thing with African migrants? I have a black son, a son from Africa, and he couldn't understand how it was possible that people were left to die, people coming from Africa. I have entitled this poem 24J, Day of Shame and Ungodliness, in the agony of thirst and hunger, in the agony of my torn flesh, in the agony of my crushed dreams. I bear the blows of the policemen who in the face of my bleeding black skin want even more to see black blood flowing. I managed to open my eyes a little to see my brothers who lie with the tears dried by the sun, who is the only one who is moved by the terror of the eyes that go out. eyes that have hallucinations of the memories of a Black mother who dreamed of freedom and the survival of her Black children. How could the eyes not fall into the sewers to all those who were watching around mercilessly at people with dreams crushed by racists? In the midst of the world of white privilege, who don't believe they are privileged, who have invented the invasion of migrants when they are the ones who have invaded with their conqueror space, the living space of the unprivileged, who in the racist and defensive world have invented that there is a racism towards whites. In the midst of this world of mental dullness, in the midst of the patriarchal system that through the centuries continues to enslave activist ideas, we cry out to them. They will not be able to erase the indelible, even if they clean the blood with bleach, even if they hide. And